Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Sophie, and today I'm diving into a story that twisted my heart, shattered my trust, and ultimately taught me who I really am. This isn't just a love story, it's a wild, emotional journey of falling for someone I thought was my soulmate, being deceived by a twin swap scheme so crazy it sounds like fiction, and uncovering a truth that changed everything. If you've ever loved someone who wasn't who they seemed, or been blindsided by a secret that flipped your world upside down, this one's for you. It's a long, twist-filled ride full of tears, laughs, and triumphs, so grab a coffee, a snack, maybe a cozy blanket, and settle in. Let's get into it. I was 25 when this all began. I'd been living in Chicago, Illinois, for a few years, working as a freelance graphic designer for local startups, creating logos and visuals that brought the city's vibe to life. My apartment was a quirky loft in Wicker Park. Think exposed brick, a cluttered desk with sketchpads and a Wacom tablet, and a balcony overlooking street murals and hipster coffee shops. Life was a hustle, designing for breweries by day, biking through Humboldt Park at dusk, editing late into the night with the L train's hum in the background. I loved Chicago's raw energy, its deep dish pizza, jazz bars, and Lake Michigan sunrises, but I was lonely. Dating here was rough, endless swipes, flaky bar meetups, nothing real. I wanted a love that felt like a Chicago summer night, electric, warm, unforgettable. It all started one chilly October evening at a street art festival in Pilsen. I was there for work, sketching ideas for a mural project for a local cafe, weaving through crowds with my notebook. That's when I met him, Ethan. He was an architect, showcasing eco-friendly building models at a booth, his chestnut hair slightly tousled, wearing a flannel shirt that screamed Midwest cool. His designs were stunning, sustainable lofts that blended with Chicago's skyline, and his crooked smile hooked me instantly. I sketched his booth for inspiration, and he caught me, grinning. "Stealing my blueprints already?" he teased, his voice smooth with a Chicago accent. I laughed, showed him my sketch, and we hit it off. Ethan was a Chicago native, raised in a big family in Andersonville, weaned on Frank Lloyd Wright and backyard barbecues. By day, he worked at a firm designing green buildings, but his passion was creating homes that told stories, dreaming of launching his own studio. He had this easy charm, part dreamer, part hometown guy, quoting Wright one minute, joking about Chicago's brutal winters the next. We talked until the festival shut down, swapping stories about our favorite spots. He was all about the pizza at Pequod's. I loved sunrise jogs by the Adler Planetarium. He shared tales of his childhood, building forts with his brothers, and I opened up about growing up in a small Wisconsin town, where my dad taught me to draw the world's beauty. When he asked to see me again, I said yes, my heart racing like the L train. Our first date was at the River Walk, strolling along the Chicago River, sharing craft beers from a nearby brewery as the city lights twinkled. Ethan was different. He listened, really listened, asking about my dreams of opening a design studio, my love for turning ideas into art. He showed me a sketch of a sustainable loft with a rooftop garden. "This is you, Sophie," he said, pointing to the page. Vibrant, grounded, one of a kind. I melted. It was like a scene from a rom-com, and I was all in. We sat by the water, watching boats glide, and he told me about his dream to build eco-communities across the Midwest. I shared my goal of starting a design blog to showcase Chicago's creative pulse. By the time we parted, I was falling hard. Our relationship was a Chicago spark, bright, intense, full of life. Within weeks, we were inseparable. We'd drive out to the Indiana dunes, where I'd sketch the shoreline while he brainstormed eco-cabins. We'd hit up Chicago's art scene, losing hours in the Art Institute, debating Monet versus local street art. He'd surprise me with little gifts, a custom pen, a doodle of the skyline tucked in my bag. We'd spend lazy Sundays at his place, a cozy apartment in Logan Square filled with blueprints, model kits, and coffee mugs, cooking Italian beef sandwiches while he played Miles Davis on his record player. "You're my muse, Sophie," he'd say, and I'd laugh, saying I was just a girl with a tablet and big dreams. "Nah, you're my whole design," he'd reply, pulling me close, and I believed him. We built our own traditions. Every Saturday, we'd hit the Logan Square Farmers Market, browsing local honey and picking out fresh berries, arguing over the best Chicago hot dog. He was a Portillo's stan. I swore by Superdog. One time, he gave me a silver necklace with a tiny skyline charm. "So you'll always carry Chicago with you," he said, fastening it around my neck with a smile that made my heart skip. We'd end the day at a dive bar in Wicker Park, sipping old style and sketching on napkins. We talked about the future endlessly, him launching his studio, me starting my blog and maybe a design agency. We planned a road trip to Door County, dreaming of sketching and building under the stars. "You and me, Sophie, we're gonna design the world," he'd say, his hand in mine, and I pictured a life as bold as Chicago's skyline. Our first summer together was pure magic. We'd bike along the lakefront trail, stopping to sketch or share a slushie from a street cart. We'd crash rooftop art parties, dancing under string lights, the city's towers glowing in the distance. He'd invite me to his firm's events, letting me pitch my designs to his colleagues, who loved my knack for turning concepts into visuals. I'd share blog post drafts, nervous but thrilled when he'd say, "Sophie, you're gonna redefine Chicago design." We celebrated my 26th birthday at a jazz bar in the South Loop, where he dedicated a song to me, his voice cutting through the saxophone. The crowd cheered, and I felt like the luckiest girl in the Windy City. But around the 18-month mark, the spark started to flicker. Ethan got inconsistent. Some days, he was his warm, charming self, planning dates, sketching with me, but others, he'd go cold, canceling plans with vague excuses like client meetings or family stuff with his sister in Milwaukee. He'd vanish for days, then reappear like nothing happened. I tried to be understanding. Architecture's intense, right? But my gut screamed something was off. He'd dodge questions about his weekends, leave his phone face down, his usual openness replaced with a weird distance. My best friend, Quinn, noticed it too. We'd been friends since I moved to Chicago, bonding over our love for pierogi and dive bars. "Sophie, he's acting shady," she said over coffee at the Wormhole. "Don't brush it off." But I did. I wanted our city romance to stay perfect, like a sunset over Lake Michigan. The first clue was subtle but strange. We were at his apartment, binge-watching Chicago Fire, the scent of his latest chili experiment filling the air, when I noticed his handwriting on a grocery list. It was different, loopier, less precise than the notes he'd left me before. I brushed it off, thinking he was rushed, but it nagged at me. Then came the work trips to Minneapolis that didn't add up. His Instagram showed him at rooftop bars, not job sites. I started noticing odd details. One day, he'd know every word to a song we'd sung together. Another, he'd act like he'd never heard it. He'd call me Soph one week, then Sophie the next, like he couldn't decide. Quinn kept saying, "Check his phone, Sophie. Something's not right." But I didn't want to be that person. I clung to the hope that Ethan was still my spark. The unease grew. At an architecture showcase I attended to support him, Ethan was presenting, and I was so proud, sketching his designs in my notebook. But afterward, he seemed off, like he was playing a role. He forgot a story we'd laughed about the week before, and when I mentioned it, he laughed too hard, saying, "Oh, right, that." I let it slide, but the doubt deepened. Then came the late-night texts he'd hide, the site visits that stretched into weekends. I started feeling like a sketch in his margins, not the main design, and it ate at me. My family back in Wisconsin noticed too. My mom, during our weekly calls, said, "Sophie, you sound off. Is Ethan okay?" I deflected, but her words echoed Quinn's warnings. The truth unraveled one stormy April night, rain pounding Chicago's streets. We were at my loft, cooking tacos, the air thick with cumin and tension. His phone buzzed on the counter, and I saw it before he could grab it, a text from Lila, "Miss you, babe. When are you back in MPLS?" My heart stopped, the room spinning. I confronted him, my voice shaking like the windows in the storm. "Ethan, who's Lila?" He froze, his face pale, then stammered, "Just a friend, Sophie, chill." But I wasn't chilling. I demanded answers, and he cracked, his voice low. "Okay, I need to tell you the truth," he said, and out it came, like a building collapsing. Ethan had a fiancée, Lila, in Minneapolis. They'd been engaged for 2 years, planning to move to Chicago for his career, but he'd come alone to test the waters, keeping her in the dark about us. To cover his tracks when he visited Lila, he'd send his identical twin brother, Owen, to Chicago to play Ethan with me. Owen, an actor with no moral compass, mimicked Ethan's mannerisms, wore his clothes, even used his cologne to fool me during Ethan's weekend trips. They'd planned it like a heist. Ethan would visit Lila, while Owen kept me clueless, swapping in for dates, dinners, even our cozy nights. But Owen slipped up. His handwriting was different, he forgot key details, and his texts were colder. That night, the Ethan in my loft was Owen, sent to keep up the charade while Ethan was in Minneapolis with Lila, planning their future. I felt like I'd been punched. My entire relationship was a lie, a performance by 2 brothers who played me like a prop. I screamed at Owen, "You're not even him." He tried to apologize, saying he was just helping Ethan, but I threw him out, the skyline necklace clattering as I tossed it after him. I collapsed, sobbing, the rain outside mirroring my tears. I'd been dating a ghost, half the time with a stranger who wore Ethan's face. Chicago's lights felt like a cruel joke. Every mural, every rooftop, every riverwalk screamed their deception. I felt like a fool. How had I not seen it? Was I not enough? I replayed every moment, every date, every laugh, every touch, wondering which were Ethan's, which were Owen's. There were no answers, just a raw wound in my chest. I called Quinn, sobbing uncontrollably, and she rushed over, staying the night, holding me as I fell apart. "You're enough, Sophie," she whispered. "You'll survive this." But I couldn't see how. The next 10 months were a haze of heartbreak. I went through the motions at work, designing logos, meeting deadlines, but my heart wasn't in it. My designs were flat, and clients noticed. I avoided Pilsen, the Riverwalk, even my balcony, terrified of memories of Ethan. Friends tried to help. Quinn dragged me to karaoke nights at the Empty Bottle. My coworker Theo invited me to gallery openings in Logan Square, but I was numb. I stopped sketching for fun, let my tablet gather dust, gained weight from stress eating deep dish and Garrett's popcorn. One low point was finding a sketch I'd done of Ethan, smiling by the lake, labeled My Muse. I tore it up, hating how it still stung. The loneliness was crushing. I'd lie awake, replaying their lies, wondering if love was just a Chicago con. The pain wasn't just emotional, it bled into everything. I started screwing up at work, submitting rushed designs, missing deadlines. My main client pulled me aside, saying, "Sophie, you're not yourself. Take some time." I felt like a failure. I stopped going to art events, scared I'd see Ethan's firm's name. I avoided my favorite coffee shop, fearing I'd see a couple that reminded me of us. My family grew worried. My brother, Caleb, drove up from Wisconsin, spending a weekend walking the 606 trail with me, trying to lift my spirits. "You're stronger than this, Sophie," he said, but I didn't believe him. I started therapy with a kind woman named Dr. Lynn, spilling my hurt in quiet sessions by the lake. She said, "Sophie, your heart's broken, but it's still yours. Let it heal." It was a lifeline, but I was still sinking. The turning point came a year later. I was at a bookstore in Andersonville, staring at a blank sketchbook, feeling like a ghost, when I saw a flyer for a pottery workshop at a local studio. On a whim, I signed up, desperate for anything to jolt me awake. The first class was a mess, clay everywhere, my pot collapsing, but I laughed, a real, gut-deep laugh that felt like sunlight through Chicago's fog. The instructor, Ruby, with warm eyes and a thick Chicago accent, said, "Sophie, let the clay hold your pain. It's not about perfect, it's about feeling." I poured my hurt into every piece, shaping mugs and vases that carried my grief, anger, and hope. Each session felt like rebuilding my foundation. In that class, I met Lila, not that Lila, a ceramicist who'd moved to Chicago after her own heartbreak. We clicked instantly, and she became my anchor, inviting me to art nights at her studio where we'd sip wine, sculpt, and talk about anything but the past. I started saying yes to life again, bit by bit. I joined an art collective in Pilsen, a tight-knit group of creatives who met in a mural-covered cafe. I shared designs, logos inspired by Chicago's grit, posters of the skyline, pouring my emotions into every stroke. The feedback was electric. Members said my work made them feel alive, like they weren't alone. One artist, Ezra, told me, "Sophie, your designs are like Chicago's pulse." I started to believe him. I signed up for salsa classes in the West Loop, stumbling through steps at a sweaty dance hall, laughing as I tripped but finding joy in the rhythm. I started running along the lakefront trail at dawn, the skyline gleaming as I pushed forward, each step proof I was still here. I took a solo trip to Galena, renting a cabin, sketching rolling hills as I journaled. It was scary to go alone, but it taught me I could be my own anchor, a canvas for my own story. New people filled the void. At an art meetup, I met Theo, a muralist with a quick wit and a passion for street art. We collaborated on a blog series about Chicago's hidden gems, murals, jazz dives, secret gardens. It wasn't romantic, but it was real, reigniting my love for design. Theo introduced me to Maya, a curator who ran gallery shows, and we bonded over our love for Chicago's creative soul. I volunteered at a local animal shelter, walking dogs and falling for a scruffy mutt named Skyline, with bright eyes and a goofy grin. I adopted him, and he became my shadow, curling up beside me as I designed or journaled late into the night. I tried kayaking on the Chicago River, flipping over a dozen times in the chilly water but laughing through every splash, feeling alive again. My creativity surged, like a skyline lighting up at night. I revived my tablet, filling files with bold designs, and relaunched my blog, sharing my art alongside stories of healing. It grew fast. Readers emailed, saying my honesty gave them hope, that my designs captured Chicago's heart. I pitched a design book to a local publisher, a collection of visuals and essays about resilience, and they offered me a deal. Creating it, surrounded by a community who believed in me, felt like a dream I hadn't dared to dream. I started a YouTube channel, posting vlogs about my journey, design, heartbreak, healing. The response was overwhelming. Viewers shared stories of betrayal and recovery, building a community that felt like a warm hug. One video, where I talked about turning pain into art while shaping a clay vase, went viral, with comments like, "This gave me courage to start over." I cried reading them, realizing I wasn't alone. Healing wasn't linear. Some days, I'd see a skyline or hear jazz and feel a pang, the ghost of Ethan and Owen lingering. Therapy with Dr. Lynn helped me navigate those moments, teaching me to honor the pain without letting it define me. I started hosting art workshops in Pilsen, giving creatives a space to share their stories. I took more solo trips, a weekend in Milwaukee to sketch its breweries, a drive to the dunes to capture its sands. I returned to art festivals, not as Ethan's girlfriend but as Sophie, the designer, embracing the city's pulse without fear. My career soared in ways I hadn't imagined. My blog landed freelance gigs with national art magazines, and I was invited to speak at a design conference in Detroit. Standing on that stage, sharing my journey from deception to strength, I felt like I'd found my truth. I started teaching design classes in Wicker Park, helping others find their vision. My book, Lines of Resilience, became a Midwest hit, with readers saying it inspired them to face their own pain. I kept vlogging, sharing art tips, recipes, and stories, building a community that felt like family. For years later, I ran into Ethan at an art fair in Logan Square, where we'd met. He looked tired, his flannel faded, his studio dream stalled. He admitted Lila had left him, that Owen had cut contact after their scheme unraveled. "I messed up, Sophie," he said, his voice heavy. I waited for the old ache, the spark that once lit me up. Nothing. "I'm good, Ethan," I said, smiling softly. I drew my own lines. I walked away, the fair's lights glowing behind me, the scent of street tacos in the air, feeling lighter than ever. Now, I'm 30, living my truth. My book's gaining traction, my YouTube channel's thriving, and I'm planning a trip to Iceland to design for an art residency. I date when it feels right, but my worth doesn't depend on anyone else. Love's not a perfect design, it's messy, real, and possible when you're whole. Chicago's still my home, its gritty streets and glowing skyline a reminder of how far I've come. I'm not the girl who fell for a twin's lie anymore, I'm the woman who drew her own story, one line, one step, one spark at a time. Alright, guys, what's your story of love, lies, or finding your spark? Drop it in the comments, let's lift each other up. If this resonated, like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Thanks for joining me on this wild ride. See you next time.